Hello, my name is Jack DeBronstein. Today I'm going to be talking about my signature assignment for diversity and inclusion. And today we're talking about disability. So just what I'm going to be talking about today is I'm going to start with my introduction about what disability is. I'm going to give some examples and some stories of people with disabilities. Then we're going to talk about the challenges that they face, and then what impresses me most about these people, and then what I've learned from these stories, and then what steps we can take. And then I'm going to give a conclusion and ask some questions to the viewers. So, an introduction to disability. There are lots of different types of disabilities in America and the world, and many different hardships that these people with disabilities go through. They're seen as different from what the norm is, from what an able-bodied person would be. They deal with things like adversity, stigma, prejudice, stereotyping every day of their life. And although they go through these things, they are humans just like us that deserve a fair shot um, in any aspect that they experience. So I'm going to be sharing some stories about people who have overcome their hardship of their specific disability and how we can take notice of their effort to be inspired by them. So the first person I want to talk about is Nicole Sharon. Nicole was born with spinal muscular atrophy, so she has to use a wheelchair to get around, is unable to walk on her own, and mostly relies on caregivers and like home health nurses to do most of her home tasks. A lot of the ADLs that she struggles with include like bathing, some feeding, regular cleaning, house activities, going to get food, groceries, different errands that she has to run. She usually relies on those caregivers to get to do that. And there was a really brutal storm where she lives in Portland that um, basically snowed over her whole town and left her unable to leave her house for a certain amount of time that she didn't know. It ended up being 8 days. So what she did is she did a lot of research and looked into this program called Ready Now, which is kind of like an emergency preparedness list that teaches you how to stockpile on certain things that you may need, like food and supplies. And she really used her own personal power to get through this time by herself, contacted her caregivers, was made aware of different emergency responders and what they can do during storms, what their limitations are, what she couldn't get help with if she really needed it. And at the end, she felt more empowered as a disabled woman, and she was able to help herself through that time. The next person is Jerry. Jerry is a paraplegic has been for over 35 years. He is a husband and a father to two girls. He doesn't let that stop him from leading a what he would call a normal life. He's able to drive. He has a normal job. He goes to do all of his own errands and helps himself around the house. He just has loss of feeling in some of his legs. And he spoke about some of the hardships and trials that he goes through, being a partial paraplegic in a wheelchair. When he went to the bank, there was a teller going around and asking all the people in line, "What do you need help with? What do you need help with? What do you need help with?" And then when they got to Jerry, said, "Oh, who are you here with?" Automatically assuming and perceiving him as somebody who's less abled, using that stigma and judgment to belittle him in a way. And he really talks about that he hopes to make the world a place that knows that he can get anything he needs, but they need to help him be able to do that. So he felt really empowered to be able to um, do all the things that he wants to do, but wants to let people know that he doesn't let what people say stop him, and he doesn't expect the world to give him everything he wants. And then the third person is Justin. When Justin was a kid, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and then a couple years later developed a disease called Meniere disease, which is a inner ear disease and affects your inner ear, so it affects your hearing and your balance. So he pretty degeneratively started losing his hearing. He had been afraid for a long time that he would go completely deaf. Um, so there was one story that he talked about where he was in a meeting at his work, and the presenter in the meeting was giving a presentation to the people at his work, and so he was giving his presentation, and then at some point just completely cut out and pretended to mouth words in order to get Justin's reaction to make him think that he had finally gone deaf. This was completely unacceptable and disgusting, honestly. And Justin talks about some other instances of, being bullied and harassed because of his disability, but he has learned to get past that and kind of use that adversity as a driving factor for him to become the best person that he can be. He wanted to prove people wrong about who they think he is just because of his disability. So eventually he started, working his way up in his job, and he now works for the CDC as a contractor that helps other people with disabilities. So I thought that was very cool. So next, what diversity and inclusion challenges has the person faced? So through these three examples, I thought that the stories that were given the most impactful for me was Justin's story, the third one, because he gave specific examples of times that he was ridiculed and bullied in a way just for his disability. Um, the prejudice that somebody may have towards a deaf person, or like not understanding how their life works, um, stereotyping them in a way that they think that they can't live in the hearing person's world. I thought this was very interesting to me, especially because I took two classes of ASL in college before. So I had two deaf professors, and they really taught me a lot about the deaf people's world and the hearing world, and how there are two different things, but we all live together cohesively, and they learn to adapt to a way of living that we are not really familiar with. So it was very cool. Um, just like I said, Justin didn't let these challenges stop him from achieving great things. He went on to work at the CDC, and he now helps people with disabilities every day. So it's awesome. He used this bias to let it serve him as a driving force so he could prove all those people wrong. What was the most impressive slash surprising slash inspirational part of the person's story? For each person, there was different stories. So I thought one part that stood out to me from Nicole was her ability to, despite not being able to live on her own previously, she learned to, with given prep time, she was able to prepare herself to live on her own and be self-sufficient despite all of her challenges with her spinal dystrophy. Um, she did this through a lot of research and preparation through that site that I referenced, Ready Now, in her hometown of Portland, Oregon. I thought that was awesome. And then Jerry is able to live a completely normal life in retrospect. He has children, is married, is able to drive himself despite being paraplegic, which I thought was super cool. He stays independent, and he doesn't let the people that may look down on him as smaller or lesser than, he doesn't let them stop him from being who he wants to be and who he knows he is. And then Justin, as we talked about, overcame the social prejudice and hardship, and proving those doubters wrong. And he now is successful in giving back to the community to help other people with disabilities realize their full potential. One important thing I learned is, well, a few important things is that no matter the hardship or the troubles that you find yourself in, there's always a way to turn those troubles into, like that driving factor, really making it a motivation for yourself to prove people wrong and to prove it for yourself mostly. You want to show people that no matter what you go through, no matter what health issues you have, your background, how you look, where you come from, all those things are not who you are, they make who you are. So personally, I'm obviously more able-bodied than these people, so it's very inspiring to see how they can combat those challenges, and it makes me inspired to be a better person when I face a challenge and I think back on, Justin and Nicole and Jerry, how they would have reacted. I think I kind of look up to them now and would want to be like they are. Um, I also like how they always have a positive outlook in these bad times. It makes me think of like the glass half full way of thinking, and I really like to live that way. I think the world is what you make it, and if you think that things are always bad and terrible for you, then that's what your brain is going to make you think. Your brain is a powerful thing, and if you look at life as, I welcome the hardships, I welcome the struggles because it's going to make me a better person, then you're probably a little better off. So what can we do to ensure that people don't have a similar experience in the future? Obviously, there's no way to stop people from getting disabilities or being born with disabilities. There's only some preventions that we can make as far as safety from people developing these, but some of these are just genetic and you're born with them or they're degenerative in that way. And so, really, the only thing that we can do is to spread awareness and educate people about how these people live and that they're just normal people like you and I. Classes such as this one that we're in right now, diversity and inclusion, I think are extremely important to educate people of all ages about other people and other ways of thinking, other ways of life, because education isn't all about yourself. It's about learning about other people and how diverse the world really is, other than cultures and race, gender, all of those things. There's also uh, people that live differently than us in a way that is what's quoted as a disability. Um, so what we can do, I think, is to offer classes and like programs and offer funding for these people to be able to do all the things that they want to do. And like accessibility uh, for different places like ramps, simple things like ramps instead of stairs, or elevators where people might not think they need them for wheelchair accessibility, or extra classes for people that have learning disabilities, extra time. And there are a lot of programs like this, but I think to get more funding for more of these organizations and programs and classes, maybe even make them a, a primary high school class would be very important and successful for the really education and awareness. So wrapping things up, people with disabilities battle hardship, prejudice, bias, stereotyping, and a lot of different things along with their own disability. They're not only facing the troubles and trials of their everyday life, having to live through life with their disability, but also how other people perceive them and react with them. Um, they deal with that every day. So people such as Nicole, Jerry, and Justin, I think are a prime example of how to not those negativities affect your life. And we need to really learn to be more accepting and helpful for people that are in need, whether they have a disability or not. The golden rule, treat everybody as you would want to be treated, I think is very important. And especially as nurses, we're going to be in a field that is helping everyone, no matter the race, the gender, the disability, where they come from, what language they speak. Um, we really can't choose who we give care to. Um, and that's kind of what I like about it. We're going to be able to help anybody and everybody. And that people with disabilities may not even consider themselves disabled. I talked to a lot of past people that I've known who have disabilities, or like the deaf community, they don't look at it as a disability. They think of themselves as differently abled. Disability is almost, it's not quite rude or anything, but it is a little bit of a negative connotation. When we think of disability, somebody who is not abled, it's not that they're not able, they are just differently abled. They're unable to do it in the way that we do it, but they do it in their own way. And that's awesome. So, some questions that I have for anybody listening, or just things that I thought were interesting to think about, is how um, do these people with disabilities, how do they want to be treated? I think that goes back to the golden rule. They probably want to be treated the same way that you want to be treated. So think about that. What makes us different than them? Really, physically, obviously, it may make a difference, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually, I think we are all really the same. So what can we do to use our resources or our able bodies to help these people? And how does this relate to nursing practice? Like I said before, as a nurse, would you plan your care differently for somebody with a disability? Um, I think it depends on the situation. Obviously, um, this isn't really a question about discrimination for versus would you give good care to somebody with a disability? Because I hope obviously that answer is no every time. You want to give the same care to every patient, but what specific methods of care might you have to give somebody who is a paraplegic, or is a quadriplegic, or has a mental disability, or hearing deficit, or seeing deficit? These are different things that you need to think about in your care um, as a nurse. Just things that you need to think about when you walk into the room. How you're going to address them, how you're going to communicate with them, how you're going to plan your care differently, what different routes do you have. So I thought this assignment was very educational, and I'm glad to be able to talk about this. There's my references.